Hello folks, Alex here. This is Alex Unabridged, and today I've got 8 of my most memorable summer holiday reads for you. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. Yes, summer is here. We're in a heat wave at the moment in the UK. It's sticky as hell. But it is at least, the sun is at least shining today. It's been a couple of grey days. We've had the last couple of days with thunderstorms and stuff. But the sun is out again today and it's lovely. And I thought with the summer holidays approaching, as in the school summer holidays approaching, I'd have a little look at some of my favourite summer reads, my most memorable summer reads, the things that I remember going way back as being kind of, things that kind of made my summer holidays in terms of books. So we'll get straight into them. So first up is one from when I was about 17, I think, and it was my first ever Stephen King, and that was The Shining. Yeah, I love this book. I still love this book. But I read it, I was away in Slovenia on summer holidays, and it was baking hot. And as a family, we'd get up and we'd go out super duper early in the morning whilst it was still cool, go and do something, go up into the mountains, get a cable car up to one of those little huts that you find in the top of the Alps, and have some food or what have you, and then come back down, and then we'd all retreat back to the hotel and the air conditioning mid-afternoon for a siesta or whatever, and I would very rarely sleep. I would read, and I'd taken The Shining with me, and so I settled down for several hours in the afternoon to read The Shining, and I was reading it in a somewhat old hotel in the mountains. And I think that's probably what made it for me. I think, reading it in that environment, reading a horror story about a hotel in the mountains certainly helped with the atmosphere. But yeah, absolutely fantastic book. Was the book that kind of got me into reading some horror, certainly into reading Stephen King. It's a good one for the summer. It's a good, fun, exciting, sort of creepy book for the summer. So that is the first one. The next one is one that I think I picked up. Yeah, I did. I picked it up at the airport on a trip somewhere. I think we were probably going to the Alps again, probably Austria or something like that. And this was the Da Vinci Code. I'm generally not a fan of Dan Brown. The other ones that I've read of his, I've not been very impressed with, shall we say. But this was the first one that I'd read, and it was perfect. It was perfect for what I wanted for that holiday. I just wanted something quick, fun, not taxing, exciting, mysteries to solve. I like clues and codes and, all that kind of esoteric stuff, stuff tied into, legends, things like that, myths and legends and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, this was brilliant. This was a really good time. I ripped through this on holiday. It's a typical airport novel. It's a mass market novel. It does what it sets out to do, and it gives you a good time with a good pacey story. So that is the second one. I definitely remember having a lot of fun reading that in the evenings in another holiday in the Alps. Okay, coming up to something a bit more recent in terms of when I read it, and that was one from last year that I thoroughly enjoyed, and that is A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson. And I have the physical book, but I actually listened to it on Audible. I have the Audible book as well, and I listened to this in a tent whilst I was camping, whilst I was having a little jaunt in the Lake District, a little kind of test trip to do a 3-day hike, long distance hike in preparation for doing a long distance hike. And I had this on in the tent in the evenings whilst I was killing time, especially the first night because it absolutely hammered it down and I couldn't really get out the tent. I was kind of trapped in there a bit to escape the rain. And yeah, this was fantastic. I love listening to this sort of stuff when I'm out hiking or camping or something. And this was perfect. This tells, this is Bill Bryson's story of him doing the Appalachian Trail with a pal of his. And it is very, very funny. I will read pretty much anything about any of the long distance trails in America. And this was one that had been recommended to me for ages by various different people. And so finally got around to it. And again, I think the situation for me matters in terms of, where I am. But this was brilliant. This kept me completely engrossed whilst I had very little else to do on my own in a tent in the pissing rain. As often happens in the UK, even in summer. So yes, a good non-fiction pick if you haven't read it and you fancy something that's a bit of an adventure, a very humorous adventure, Bill Bryson's Walk in the Woods. Next up, back to fiction and something very fast-paced and I think, rather trashy in some respects, but really good fun. And certainly something that kind of evokes that kind of summer mood, I think, for me. And that is Dead Until Dark by Charlaine Harris, which is the first in the Sucky Stackhouse series of novels, which is what True Blood, the TV show, was based on. And this, this is kind of modern vampire stuff, vampire and other things as we get into the series. Set in the Deep South, set in Louisiana. So it's kind of, the actual environment, the biome, if you like, that it's set in is, it's hot weather, it's, quite steamy, quite oppressive in some respects. But for me, it feels like a summer book, this. I read this years ago one summer after I'd watched the first season of the TV show of True Blood, and I read quite a few of the other ones in the series. I think I got up to about book 8 before I kind of lost interest. But the first one I really, really enjoyed. Certainly the first one, and I think probably up to about book 4 I really enjoyed. I ripped through those. I think probably in the same summer. I think I just started and didn't stop. So that's quite a good one if you fancy like a really quick, easy to read, silly, fun series, because there are quite a lot in that series. So yeah, but I have great memories of just lazing around. I think that summer I didn't do much other than kind of probably sit outside and read and just rip through these fun books. So that's the next one on the list. Next up is one from a couple of years ago, which was a summer where I couldn't really get outdoors that much. I was injured and I couldn't go out and do my own hiking and things like that. And I'd seen this on Instagram because I follow the artist on Instagram. And this is A Brush with the Coast, an artist's search for inspiration along the Southwest Coastal Path. The Southwest Coastal Path goes all the way around the kind of sticky out bits, as I call it, in the southwest of the UK. I think it starts in Devon, on the north coast of Devon, works its way all around the north coast of Cornwall, all the way around past Land's End, and along the south coast of Cornwall and Devon, and finishes up in Dorset, I believe. And this is the illustrated story of Sasha Harding's journey with her doggy friend on the Southwest Coastal Path, searching for artistic inspiration. And this has wonderful illustrations in. Sasha Harding's a painter and does these wonderfully warm paintings. This is full of her sketches and paintings, like sort of illustrating her journey. And lots of writing about her journey and the people she met and all that kind of thing, split up by kind of the days of the journey, the days of the trail, Yeah, it was just one of those where I couldn't get out and do a trail myself. I couldn't get out and do much walking, but I was able to kind of live vicariously through Sasha Harding's journey, and get some artistic inspiration myself. This was really useful for me, just in terms of a way of looking at that kind of journey, with a visual component to it as well. Because that's what I'm trying to do with my own work in terms of my own long distance hikes, trying to put them together into a combined written and visual format. And so this is one of those books for me that kind of started that off, I think, really, actually. I hadn't really considered writing and illustrating my own journeys until I started to come across stuff like this. And so yeah, it's been very different from what I'll produce, but it's really good to see those kind of formats. So yes, that's another good one, and a very interesting one if you're interested in that kind of region of the UK. Next up is one that I enjoyed on audiobook. Again, I listened to most of it whilst I was out hiking, but I enjoyed it so much I was listening to it, of an evening as well, back on the sofa. And that is No Shortcuts to the Top by Ed Viesturs. And this is Ed's kind of autobiography, memoir, about his challenge he set himself to climb all of the 8,000 metre plus peaks in the world, or 14 of the peaks. And it goes into his adventures doing that, but also his own history, his own kind of how he got interested and involved in mountaineering, things like that. And so yeah, this was another one that was great for when I was out hiking in the summer. But the reason why I think I like this one is because there's a lot of stuff obviously in colder climates. And this is something that I've found is when it gets really hot here in the UK, my wife and I would tend to watch things. We tend to find films and documentaries and things like that on YouTube or on streaming services, or we find books about snow sports or colder climates, expeditions to the Arctic, things like that, because somehow psychologically they make us feel cooler. And that's what this did as well, this book, No Shortcuts to the Top, because obviously he's talking about, sort of in the majority of cases, high altitude mountaineering and extremely cold climates. When you're up that high, whether it's on Everest or K2 or Annapurna, anywhere like that, you are in extreme cold conditions. You are at risk of frostbite, things like that. There's something about being able to imagine, and he writes very well, so you can imagine kind of his journey, and what he's feeling. He talks very well about that, there's something psychological with that kind of just helps me to cool down. So yeah, very much enjoyed that one. That one's a great summer read of an adventure. Even when I am able to go out and hike, I like to read stuff. I'm bimbling around on low hills, do you know what I mean? But I like to read stuff about real, like, big adventures and expeditions and things that I'll never be able to do and I'll never want to do, really. The risk is too high for me, and I don't think my fitness will ever be up to that. I think I'll probably miss the boat with that at my age. But yeah, as I say, it's not something I aspire to, but it's definitely something that I want to read about other people's experiences of. So Ed Viesturs, No Shortcuts to the Top. Another recent one for me, on the comic and graphic novel front, which I think is a great summer read, which I've just read the second volume of, is Lumberjanes, which is essentially a group of young girls at a summer camp, and all of the supernatural sort of adventures that they have, the supernatural creatures they meet and mysteries that they solve and things like that. And this is just really good fun, and it is just a very summery, almost kind of feeling like back to school summer holidays kind of vibe. because it is, you know, it's aimed at sort of middle grade young adult, but it's very, very funny. It's very sharp in its wit a lot of the time. It's quite sarcastic, and I think it's, you know, it's perfectly pitched to be, you know, enjoyed by a wide age group. You know, lots of different age groups. I think it's just as good for adults as well as kids, to be honest. So yeah, that one I think is a fantastic series. I will keep reading that. But yeah, for this summer, so far, that's my, I think, you know, my most summery read so far this year. So yes, check out Lumberjanes if you haven't already. And then finally on this list, the one that I have to mention, and that is The Passage. And I've talked about this a bit before because this is my favourite book of all time so far, but nothing has beaten it. And this is fantastic. This came out, I think, in May or June 2010. And I'd picked up a little kind of excerpt, sort of pamphlet for it when I was in a bookshop before it came out, and thought, oh, what's this about? And read it was the first chapter, and read the first chapter, and kind of immediately kind of went, oh, this is really interesting. I want to read this when it comes out. So went and bought it when it released, and saved it for the summer. In 2010, I remember I'd had a really busy year at work, where I'd built up an absolute ton of like time off in lieu. So I was able to take a huge amount of time off over the summer from my job. I was working at a college, and it was, you know, the students were away for summer. I had, as I say, a ton of holiday left over and some time off in lieu. So I think I took about 4 or 5 weeks off during the summer. And I read a lot of stuff, but this was the first one that I read. And this was just enthralling. This was one of those, books where I just wanted to read it constantly. And it's a good thick book for a summer read. You know, it's one of those where I waited until I was off work so that I could just devour it, because it is nearly 1,000 pages. It's one of those great chonkers of a book that you can properly get into when you've got a bit of summer holiday. It's apocalyptic. It's, you know, kind of an adventure. You know, it's kind of like a mission, a quest sort of book. It's sort of vampires, but not. It's a modern take on vampires. It's, you know, got tons of really great characters. The world building in it is fantastic. I've read the other two in the trilogy, which I also love, but nowhere near as much as The Passage. The Passage is outstanding as a book on its own. So yeah, that one is absolutely, I think, my favourite summer read of all time, and my favourite book of all time. But yes, if you fancy a big chunk of a book to really get into for summer, and you haven't read The Passage, and you like that kind of thing, post-apocalyptic / apocalyptic vampire virusy fantasy stuff, then give it a crack. So those are my 8 most memorable summer reads. Let's hope that I have some other great ones this summer to add into that list. I do have another Justin Cronin to read, The Ferryman, that I will be reading next month in July, and I might try to find something else for next month that's a bit of a chonker to get through, seeing as I've got a little bit of time in July to kind of chill out and potentially get sucked into one of them big books. So yes, but do let me know in the comments what you're planning on reading this summer, if you've got some big summer reads waiting for you. And I hope that you have wonderful weather and chance to kick back and relax with a book and a glass of whatever takes your fancy, and some ice cream and all that great hot weather stuff. But I will end it there today. So thanks very much for watching, folks. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider giving me a like and subscribing for more content coming soon. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.